um, find clinical trials for the 95% of rare conditions that have diagnosed with dyskeratosis congenita by I mean, short telomere syndrome. Dyskeratosis congenita, by the way, is a form of both. Damien's journey is one of resilience to fly in the Air Force. To um, to his retirement. Damien bone marrow recipient for aplastic and anemia and at the Mayo Clinic. Dive in. Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. Please do not follow unless you your as we get into the political towards let's keep the conversation respectful and avoid political discussions in this. So, Damien, can you can you take us back to the time noticed with your health, and what were your early
Yes, ma'am. So I think, to the best of my knowledge, my symptoms started to come around around maybe 2015. It was, but there was a lot of changes in my body, anyways. Prior to that, October of 2014, I was on a deployment and I gained a bunch of weight, just weightlifting. I was in a deployed environment, so I went from 148 to 176. And then 2 months past that point, I got up to 196. So that's approximately 50 pounds of gained weight. I also, in the deployed environment, I was at sea level, and my base that I was stationed at was in Utah, which was a significantly higher elevation. So the symptoms I experienced were shortness of breath and fatigue, but I always kind of just met that with, oh, well, you're on a night shift, or you're at a higher elevation. You just need to work towards getting better. Shortly after returning back to Utah, I moved to Korea. So from that period of time, I I was at sea level again. So it was kind of just a bunch of movement and things. And while I was there, I didn't work out nearly as much. I ate really well, and so I left that station at the same weight, but not in any great shape. So it was kind of like, okay, hey, look, like you took the time off. I moved to Florida after Korea, and with the humidity, I'm originally from Arizona, as you stated, and so humidity was kind of something I wasn't entirely used to. So I always made these excuses that, oh, hey, look, your blood is not. There's no issue here. It's just you're out of shape or you're just tired, and you're everyone gets tired when they're working like 12-hour shifts or whatever. And so, but those were the early symptoms, was just shortness of breath, constant fatigue. And being entirely honest, it wasn't until um, I went to switch career fields, and they caught my blood discrepancies on just a blood test, and it was something that wasn't the focus of what it was. I was looking to change career fields, and they found discrepancies in my blood, and that's kind of what cascaded into everything over the last few years.
Mhm.
But to answer your question, I really dismissed everything. I just didn't really. Um, I didn't really care to think about it. I was in my early mid-20s, and I was like, oh well, it's okay. I don't have to worry about this stuff. And yeah.
We're missing parts of what you're saying, and I missed the last part of
Oh,
what you said.
no, I just said that I dismissed most of the things. On my end, you're a little digital as well, and I wasn't sure if it's me or you.
Oh, okay. The connection, I'm trying to find a good spot inside the house. It's kind of hard to find.
Yes, ma'am. No worries.
Um, I'm with it. Um, let's see. So I have a picture here from your Air Force time. You want to explain that one?
Yes, ma'am. So that photo was taken, I believe, in Kuwait, um, January of 2020. Yeah, January 2020. That was after I had gone through all my training, and that was the other thing too, is I met all my benchmarks. Every year I passed my my PT or physical training tests, and I was able to function at work, and through it all I got waivers to go through the flight school and everything. So I went through survival school. I also was able to perform like in the aircraft unpressurized. So there was no real indicator that I was sick, for lack of a better term. And but that one, it was towards the end of the deployment. That was a very interesting time. That was from November 2019 to January 2020. There was a lot that happened during that time. If people remember the time leading up to COVID and stuff, but I flew on the AC-130 gunship, and I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I was a flight engineer. As the flight engineer, you calculate. Um, we call it TOLD. It's takeoff and landing data. So all the, like, for example, if the aircraft was a certain weight, and it was on a runway of a certain material, the material is usually weighted or rated for a specific aircraft. And so with that in mind, the temperature, the elevation, the wind, gust factors, and all those things, I would calculate all these factors so that we knew how fast we need to be, and what we need to do to take off properly, to land and fly the aircraft to its best capability. I also operated all the systems on the aircraft, and it was one of the most rewarding jobs that I ever was a part of. I loved it. I really, really was proud of being a part of what they call in the Air Force, tip of the spear. I was in the operations. I was a part of like that direct impact of. I could see what we were doing, just instantaneously. But but yeah, shortly after that, I was grounded. So
So let's see. What let's see. What was it like balancing the demands of military life with with
Um, I mean, I just thought it was just it's one of those things where it's normal for you, but it's definitely not normal for everyone else. And so it was my normal. And so I just performed, I think, in the mission or in the mindset that the mission comes first. So I just did everything I was very, very invested into my job. And so again, I just missed everything. I went to appointments as needed. So it was kind of like on a 6 month cycle. So I would attend my appointments, and from what the doctors explained to me, that they didn't know what it was, or but we were just going to continue to monitor, and so that was good enough for me. I was like, all right, well, they're the professionals and I trust them, so I just kept doing my job. And the nature of my job is that we do close air support, so usually there's people's lives at stake or something. And so my focus was making sure that the men and women on the ground were protected. So my focus was that, and I just didn't really care. I just kept pressing, kept pushing, and I just worked a little harder. And I just told myself that, hey, this is your normal, and if you care about your job and what you're doing, then you're gonna have to just work past it. And that's what I did.
can you describe the process let's see, of being diagnosed with dyskeratosis? What challenges the inaccurate diagnosis?
So I think starting out, I was diagnosed with like a form of anemia, and that's kind of what we went with. It was just like, oh, you have a little bit of funky blood, and you're gonna, and that's what we'll go with. That's what a lot of my waivers were geared towards. Is, oh, you just have an anemia, and we'll just continue to monitor. And so it started with anemia. From there, and I think in the realm of blood, there's like there's minor treatments, and then there's more invasive ones. And with the absolute most invasive is a bone marrow transplant. So while I was in New Mexico, is where I flew out of, and so while I was in New Mexico, I had my first appointments with an oncologist, and and from there, the doctor was very kind of adamant that this looks like myelodysplastic syndrome, and so we started with blood tests, and then it moved on to bone marrow biopsies, and so I had my first biopsy in 2018, um, and and from there they were able to find dysplasias within the samples, and so they pressed with that, and so it was pretty quick. And I know that doesn't really happen all the time for everyone, but yeah, so we had that in mind that, hey, it's maybe it's this thing, the myelodysplastic syndrome, and then and we just continued to do biopsies and further blood testing, and after that we were in the ballpark. And it wasn't until I actually got to the Mayo Clinic where where they actually started doing genetic testing, and that myelodysplastic syndrome started to possibly be aplastic anemia, one of the two. And then around March of 2022, I found out that it was a dyskeratosis congenita based off of short telomere syndrome. So it was always in the realm, and we knew that the absolute um, the the most invasive treatment would have been the bone marrow transplant. And so it was always in the back of my mind that this is something you're going to need at some point in your life. Just when does it happen was the bigger question. But it took about 5 years to actually get that dyskeratosis congenita diagnosis, and that's pretty much what that process was. It was very long, a lot of biopsies, a lot of blood work, and just consistency, and going and communicating to the doctors my symptoms and everything. And then they made the decision to do a transplant
Mhm.
in May of 2023.
can be younger or longer. Um, so because they do all of the common. Let's see. Oh, just your flight. Were you able to pursue your? You were able to pursue your dream to become a flight engineer. What did? How did you manage? The,
So I really just I I was able to do my flight engineer stuff, and I knew that this wasn't going to be a forever job, and so I just fully invested into the job, and I went to the doctor's appointments as needed, but I think this may be common along. It might be common with a lot of military members or especially air crew members, where there's a lot of people that have ailments, whether they're like just bad knees or anything like that, or they have conditions, and it's something that a lot of people just kind of hide. They hide their symptoms, or they kind of just they don't fully disclose things. I think that was another element, is that I really wanted to fly to the point where I was willing to jeopardize health and time towards testing for more serious conditions. And so the way I really managed was I said that, yes, I know that there's a blood condition, because I really can't manipulate the blood numbers every time we go into like a lab draw. But what I could do is say, no, but I feel fine. I feel fine. I'm able to perform my duties. Um, I don't I don't need to go and start transfusions or anything. I feel fine. And I just kept telling myself that and believing it really. And so as long as I was still able to perform, I felt that I was good enough that I wasn't necessarily as sick as as the lab counts portrayed. Um,
uh, um, during noticeably performance or daily life, and how did you cope?
so so going back to when you showed that photo, that was in January of 2020. Um, Shortly after that, February of 2020, I was grounded. I had my last flight on like the 29th of February, and it led into COVID. And so I was already kind of grounded from flight. My duties did not include any flight. I I kind of that was a gut punch, and it really kind of sucked. Then I was put into isolation because COVID hit, and we didn't know the extent of how sick I was or what, so and how I would be affected if I contract COVID. So I was put into immediate isolation through my work center, and so I started working remotely from home. But being alone for that extended period of time was really taxing on the mind, and it also led into June of 2020, where my father passed away, and from that, there was just a lot of other things, a lot of
So
life
like,
just in that period, and it was all difficult. It really hurt, and so to cope, unfortunately, I turned to alcohol, and it was just something that I grew up in the military. Just kind of, it was something that maintainers did. It's something that aircrew did. But I noticed that it was starting to become a problem. But with all that stuff, I never sought mental health, or I didn't do anything. I kind of just I coped that way, and it led to, I don't know, the God or whoever that you turn faith to. I got a rude awakening when I got into a car accident. I wasn't like it wasn't anything serious, and thankfully I was the only one in the car. But it was something enough that I wasn't fully myself, and I needed to seek help. And that's when I started going to therapy, and that was a really big turning point for me. But it still kind of was unfortunate because shortly after all that, the Air Force made a determination that I was no longer fit for service because my blood numbers were so low. And so something I fully invested myself into, something where I was there for the better part of a decade. Um, it felt like the service no longer wanted me because I wasn't good enough, and that also hurt. And I lost a huge sense of identity. Um, and and then but I kept pursuing because I mean I'm continuing to get more sick, and so I started turning to other things. I started to develop a system where I I no longer drank. I cessated all those things, any external substances. I focused into therapy, doing that kind of work. I got a gym membership. I started doing physical activities, and I really just changed my mindset, and that it was no longer something. I think I turned my whole outlook, instead of outward, I turned it on to myself and tried to make my focus was forced to be my health. And so I made it a point to do everything for myself to get myself to a condition where I could be ready for a transplant. And so in coping, like it was there was just so many things that happened all at once from 2020 to even now, that it wasn't so much that I was like I had an opportunity to kind of live in any kind of grief or anything. It was just constantly just things happening one after another, and so I'd lost. Um, I didn't really have anything. I was kind of forced into the growth, and but it was for my benefit, and I'm grateful for the things I experienced because they make me who I am now.
Mhm. So, career where oh, I think we already went that we just did that. Community, and your peers sure, and to face um, more severe symptoms.
So I think I've made really great bonds through my military career. I usually was in communities that were kind of smaller. My career fields first with the electronic warfare. It was a very small community, and then the AC-130 gunship community is fairly small as well. So we usually stick together, and we have a crew mentality because everyone on the crew has an invested interest in getting up in the air and also landing safely, and so we tend to be really close, and that camaraderie was very very important to me, and they took it really well. They were very supportive, all the way through when I was no longer flying, all the way till I was medically retired. And even now, I stay in contact with a lot of my friends, and I consider them family. Um, and in conjunction with my friends and peers, I also have my family, which consists of my brother and sister, my mom, stepdad, and then all my extended family. And we're just a really close Hispanic family, and so everyone has all like rallied together. And I think I've been very fortunate and very blessed to have a community around me that rallies, and me being the one that is the focal point, being sick and needing extensive care and stuff. It I've been very blessed to have people who just they're there, like whether it's a phone call or everything, or just taking care of me when I needed caregiving. Um, I had a really great community. I still have a really great community, and they've been very supportive, and I'm truly grateful to that. So, right as I was retiring, it just so happened, that there was Rottweiler puppies available. My first dog growing up was a Rottweiler. His name was Pachuco, and so I grew up with that dog. That dog was born in March, and I was born in October of that same year, and so I love that dog, and he passed away in my early childhood. Um, and so I always told myself, "Hey, I wanna get a Rottweiler." I just didn't know when. When would be a good time? I also wanted to be kind of like a present dog parent, and, so as I transitioned out of the military, I was no longer flying all the time or going on trips, once or twice a month, and so I felt like it was opportune to, like, really do that. So I got his name was Uko, which is short because when I was a child I couldn't pronounce Pachuco. All I could say was Uko. And so my dog became Uko. And so I had him. I got him at 6 weeks, or between 6 to 10 weeks. Um, and my grandfather is really kind of particular when it comes to dogs. He always told me that the dog chooses you, you don't choose the dog. And so I remember going to the family that had the puppies, and we sat around for a little bit, and Uko's the one who chose me. He walked up to me, and so that was him. And I really took that to heart, and I brought him home, and we grew. I put him through beginner obedience training, intermediate. We were in scent training. He used to swim all the time. He loved the water, and he was everything to me. He taught me so many things that I didn't know that I needed. He taught me how to love, and really kind of, I don't have kids, but when he would get into things and that frustration, like, oh no, don't do that, or anything like that, like correcting pretty much a puppy, like almost like an infantile child. And so he gave me a lot of like things. He taught me how to accept unconditional love, and just to have that kind of, it's a different kind of structure, but just being there and really taking care of this life. And so I had all his meals prepped, and
Mhm.
we would go on walks all the time. Like I really invested into him. And as I got sick, I left in May of 2023. So I got him in February of 2022, and so I had him for over a year, and my health declined, and I was up there in Phoenix, as to Tucson, where I'm originally from, so about 100 miles away. And my mother and stepfather took care of him while I was away. He went from, when I got him, he was 15 pounds, and by the time I was leaving, he was 135 pounds. So in that short period of time, he got big, and he was a lot of love, and he was one of those lap dogs, and he would lean on you and everything. And he was just a lot of love. And unfortunately, as the first transplant, I know this wasn't mentioned before, but I went through two transplants last year. And so the first
Mhm.
transplant was starting not to look very good, and I started showing signs of other viruses, and effectively it led to those viruses killing off my donor cells. And in that same week, it was a matter of 4 days, I learned that my donor cells had been killed off, the transplant was unsuccessful, and that and then my dog Uko, he passed away. He started to seize, and it was very quick. But I personally feel like animals like that, they come into your life at a really crucial period of time, and they have a purpose in place. And I feel like he fulfilled his purpose, and that's kind of what I hold on to. I miss him. I think about him every day. We just hit his 1 year anniversary of passing, but I miss him. He was a big part of my life, and it was very short, but it was very full. Um, and yeah, he was a great companion.
So would you ever? I don't know if you're hearing me or not.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Currently, I am not in any condition or place to have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
He, at least definitely not a Rottweiler, but given that my physical ailments, just right now, I'm still immunocompromised. I have a lot of, I got a lot of appointments still going on. I'm being seen once a week, once every 2 weeks. We're kind of getting back to a state where appointments may look like they're going to be once a month again. But I just my focus right now is really my health, and if I really want to be capable of being a dog parent again, I think I have to really focus on healing myself, and then really going and then maybe I can open myself up to another dog. I don't know. I personally, I'm a really big dog, like large dog person. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. I may go for a smaller breed or something, and but I still have to get to stages where like maybe my edema is a little less, and where I can be more mobile, and I can really contribute to a dog where they're we can go on longer walks and really kind of do those things. But long story short, I would say not right now, but I am definitely going to get a dog at some point later on. Oh, I think I lost. Can you hear me?
Um, the picture again. Can you tell us about this picture?
Yes. So that I believe I have a PIC line at that point. So first transplant, I had a central line installed, so it had 3 lumens, so three little dangling tubes that went straight to my heart. Um, when I got sick in August of last year, and I was put into the hospital, and the donor cells went away, they they were concerned that maybe the central line had been compromised, and so they removed it and installed a PIC line in my arm. And so at that point, I was getting transfusions every day, every other day, whether it was hemoglobin, platelets, magnesium, and potassium. And it was an unsettling time because I was dealing with a lot of really heavy things, because I went into the hospital with the hopes that a transplant would work, and you kind of hope that that first one takes, and you're good to go after that. But at this point, it wasn't the case. I had just lost my dog, and so I think that that pictures me receiving a transfusion of sorts, and that took place pretty much from the end of August all the way until um, November, when I went to go into my second transplant. But yeah, that time was very trying. There was a lot of mental strain, to the point where I picked up the frequency of my therapy. So I was doing it a little bit more frequently, and I also opt to go on like an antidepressant just as a measure so that I could get through these really tough times. And that was probably an important lesson that I learned, is that there's a lot of tools, resources, mechanisms to that are at your disposal, and it's up to you as a patient or just a person to advocate for yourself and say, hey, you know what, I'm not okay right now, and what can you do for me? And the doctors provided those things, and it really helped me through this really tough time. And I kind of went into the mindset that this is temporary, it's not forever, but you need to do what you have to do. And I guess going back to my military career, you do the things you need to do to accomplish the mission. And I held that mindset throughout this whole time, was that, hey, this is just a deployment, things are going to go wrong, things will go well, but you're away from home, you're not comfortable, and there's going to be a lot of things, but you're going to just, whether it's compartmentalized or whatever, but you're going to get from point A to point B, and you're going to return home, um, with dignity and honor. And so I really focused on that. I did the things I needed to do, and whatever the doctors needed, because I knew that it was necessary at this point. And so, yeah, that was one of the harder points of this transplant experience. Um, but again, I had really great support. I had family members. I um I was really just I was focused on the day to day. It made me very, very present and very aware of what was going on with my body, any feeling and stuff, to the point where it was maybe a hyper focus, but it but it was all for my benefit. And yeah, and that's kind of what that picture, those are the feelings that it brings up and the memories that it brings up. It was a hard time, and
Hmm.
but thankfully we were able to get through it.
So, losing your father in 2000, managing your own health is.
So, I mean, losing a parent hurts no matter what, and he was my closest confidant, and he was practically my hero growing up, and he had a really rapid decline. I think things with him were that he had a blood condition, but it never got to a point where he necessarily needed immediate treatment. And he was monitored, post his military career, um, for the better part of 30 years. And so he had all that going on. And I remember, I was very blessed in the sense that I still was able to have a conversation with him the day prior. Um, I remember I bought my first house, and I did a lot of work to. We had a pool, and so I got the pool up and running. It was finally, it went from just that murky green to blue, and my dad got to see it. He accidentally switched on the video to FaceTime, and we had a conversation, and he got to see it, but I could tell he wasn't very well, and I was kind of worried. But he was the type of person that kind of kept things to himself, and he would suffer in silence because he didn't want anyone else to like be there with him, and like he made his choices and stuff. But and but it was hard. It's hard because that's somebody that's so crucial to your life, and they're no longer here. And as I said, I really just didn't handle it well. I truly did not. I should have went to therapy, but I made my choices, and I really just didn't handle it well. But with all the life developing, and then getting retired from the military, I really didn't have too much time. But 6 months prior to my transplant, I made a conscious choice to actually really develop, my skills, and heal from a lot of traumas. And so once I started consistently going to therapy, that's where I started making more progress in that sense. And but I mean, I just I miss him, and it's hard to lose somebody of that caliber. But I kind of now, I think when it comes to losing people or just big traumas, or things that are kind of like they're cuts to your heart and stuff, and they don't ever go away, but they'll scab and they'll heal in their own way, but you know they're still there, and so it still hurts. And there's things that remind me of my dad, a lot like Uko and stuff, but I've grown and healed in my own way, um, and I'm very fortunate for all that.
Yeah. Let's see. Uh, through your health.
I think I've I have a really great team. It's not like it's just one doctor. It's a whole team. It's a whole community up and down the chain. You have the nurses, the phlebotomists, the dietitians, everyone. It's very comprehensive, and I'm very grateful for that. My family has been really, really crucial during this time, relying on them and my friends. But also, I think I personally take a little bit of ownership. I've kind of alluded to it throughout this whole process, but I developed a system for myself, and I know it's a pretty common system, so it's not like I really invented anything new. But I defined a wellness for myself, and that was um, divided into 10 parts.
Big comment.
Excuse me?
Yeah. I'm your recovery is you recover and make it okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Um,
Let's see. Um. So we're on support systems. Has your condition impacted your day? You
oof.
pros and
I apologize, ma'am. I think you cut out, but you asked what my day
uh,
to day looks like. Um,
so
okay, so day to day, I'm still recovering, and I'm within a year of the second transplant. There's still side effects to some of the medications. I take about 25 to 30 pills a day. Um, and so I'm just always checking my oxygen. I'm checking my blood pressure. I'm also checking my temperature, because if any of those are, if oxygen's too low or I'm running a fever, that's an immediate trip to the emergency room. So we're not out of the woodworks. The most recent hospital stay was in July for respiratory viruses. I'm still immunocompromised, and I live a very isolated life right now. But I know that I'm isolating right now with the hopes that I'm going to end up being able to reintegrate into society, um, at hopefully at the year mark or shortly after that. But I don't have my baseline immunizations, so I kind of just try to stay away, because the name of the game right now is not to get any more sick than I already am. And so I kind of have turned my focus, if you will, to other things, be it advocacy or just getting involved with the rare disease community. I've also started to take online classes just so that I have something that keeps my mind going. And So it's just kind of adapting. I may not be able to do the things that I necessarily love. I'm a big concert goer traditionally, and I love snowboarding in the winter. So I'm kind of withholding from things that were previous passions and stuff, and just kind of adjusting to what's within my scope of reality right now. What's kind of within my control. So right now it's just schoolwork and stuff, keeping in contact with friends and family, but also just being really conscious. And then on top of all that, going to my appointments. So it's a little restrictive lifestyle, but the hope is that in time I'll be able to physically, mentally, and just socially be able to reintegrate into society again. So I see it says what kind of online classes. Uh,
Right.
I'll say that I'm a big philosophy guy. I think that was one of the things in the preparation work for the transplant. I read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and a lot of other Stoic kind of philosophy literature, and so I'm taking an intro to logic right now, and then I'm also taking a mythology class, kind of something that's not super in depth, just something that's kind of it's getting me going, just kind of easing into the education realm. But yeah, so I'll be also taking like sociology on the second half of the semester. But um, but yeah, so kind of easing into that. Um, yeah, it is. It really is. And it really taught me a lot of stuff. I think going into a lot of the medical journey, I've lived off of a couple like kind of just statements or sayings that I've learned. But amor fati, which is love of fate, really just embracing the things that come at you and stuff. Memento mori, which translates to remember you must die, effectively, which kind of just goes into just living a life that is worthwhile and just kind of that's how I perceive it. Is just everyone dies at some point, so just really to make the most of your time that you have available to you. And then I remember in one of my doctor's appointments early on into the process, I usually get the word of the day from dictionary.com or wherever, and it was totus veribus, which means with all one's might. And so with that, I give it my all, whatever I'm putting my hands to or my mind to. I try to make the most of it and do my best in those situations. And so yeah, but eventually once I can start going to in-person classes, I'm looking to get into like culinary arts and kind of learn like kind of communication skills, especially if I'm going to be in a light where I'm speaking to more people and stuff. That's kind of what I want to do. Just get functional skills through education.
Mhm. Can you can you describe the physical and emotional?
Okay, yeah, for sure. So I feel like everything that I've experienced and stuff led to me being able to go through this transplant. I went through military survival school, and in that they teach you survival skills, but they also teach you like resilience skills or resistance skills for like if you were to ever be captured by an enemy of sorts and put through traumas or anything like that. What it like psychologically, how do you kind of navigate those things? And then going through deployments and combat and stuff, it prepared me in a different kind of way where I went in with that mindset that this is game time, this is what we have to do. It's not always going to be great, but I have a mission in mind, I have a focus, and I'm just going to do those things. And so psychologically, I kind of either compartmentalized or I just turned my feelings off, which is a common thing that a lot of military members do. But so I always kind of shout my feelings that, okay, hey, look, I'm not going to deal with this right now because I have to just get through the day. Whether, and that kind of led into the whole process. But the process was during the first transplant, it was 5 days of chemo, a day of radiation. There was a break, and then it was transplant. And then following that transplant, there was 2 days of chemo, and then the introduction of immunosuppression. And so So you do that. I was in the hospital for 32 days, and then after that, I went to outpatient appointments like every 3 days or 3 times a week and stuff like that. Which then I got really sick in that August period, and I was in the hospital for 15 days, and then appointment frequency turned up a lot. So now I was going to the clinic every day, every other day. It just was really dependent on the number, my blood numbers, and so I was really just ingrained in that. Second transplant, because I'd already gone through radiation once, they did not feel comfortable doing that, and it was a different chemo regimen, but it was again 5 days chemo, and then it was transplant. Like there was no break in between, and then on that same day of transplant, we we started chemo and the introduction of immunosuppression because just of my vulnerable state. I think it's really cool though. I know that you never really fully know who your donor is, but the first transplant, it was a lady from Sweden, and the way they did this transplant was it was considered a live harvest. So they took the stem cell of the bone marrow, and then they overnighted it all the way to the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, and then the the transplant itself was through pretty much my central line, and it was about a 7 hour kind of transfusion of a stem cell. Now the second one was a little quicker, and it was a more concentrated dose, but it was just really interesting, and that came from a lady in Sweden, or not Sweden, but Israel. And so, if you know about last year and how everything has kind of happened, it was really scary because I didn't know if I was actually going to get these donor cells. But it seems like these donor cells have taken, and I'm just very blessed and fortunate that things worked out how they did. And so far, I'm still 100% donor. So that's really great. And I'm very hopeful that it will continue to be that way. But but yeah.
Um, let's see, what was your oh, okay, how has your
So okay. So I would say that my understanding of I think when you're introduced to the rare community, um, I honestly didn't know anything. And if it wasn't for me being sick, unfortunately, I wouldn't have been introduced to this community at all until I got involved into it, whether it was a family member or myself. And so I've been really fortunate to be introduced to different people. And I think the Mayo Clinic or just any of the doctors prior to that, it all led me to where I'm at now. And whether it was kind of just reading through literature. But what I've found is that in that August period of time last year where I was kind of really sick, um, there was actually kind of there was a presentation that was going on, like a 3 day kind of seminar for blood conditions specific to myelodysplastic syndrome and aplastic anemia. And those through that, it kind of I got involved with the first foundation that I ever was introduced to, which was the AAMDS IF, which is the Aplastic Anemia Myelodysplastic International Foundation. They were the ones heading this little seminar. It was 1 day actually, and but through that I met a lady, and she introduced me to different foundations and groups, and so through that community and network, I was able to expand, and through that meet people who are like me or are experiencing similar things, and then through that dialogue between those extra communities and stuff has really educated myself, and to the point where now I'm learning about other conditions and stuff. And when people tell me this is who I am and this is what I go through, like I go and I do my own research, and I'm like, wow, this is really, it's crazy and stuff. But this community has been really welcoming, and it's really been very informative. And past that, I'm able to inform my brother, sister, and my family on the things that we go through and stuff, so that everyone is better informed. And I think that's what advocacy is all about, is just really getting the awareness out there, and then also gaining support and stuff. And so it's really created a whole network of just education and awareness, and I'm really grateful for that as well.
What is the treatment process like, especially with your
Currently,
so weekly?
yes, ma'am. So currently, the treatment process, though it is increased in the number of appointments, it looks like we're getting to that 1 year mark where eventually, hopefully, it's every 6 months again, maybe down to once a year. But it's this has become my job. It's become my focus. So going to my appointments is paramount, and then from there, everything else is secondary. So I think not only, I think when you go through these really extensive treatment plans and stuff, you're not the only one experiencing this, and there's ripples, whether it's your family or whoever. So I know that my family has had to adjust their lifestyles, and so it's not only myself. And so I had a caregiver for pretty much all up until last month. And so just I've had to have people at my appointments and commuting, just so that I could get to where I need to be and stuff. But I'm just very fortunate that my mom, she's been pretty much the primary caregiver, and she's really came in, um, and really helped in a huge way. But yeah, it's pretty much it's all I think about. I usually build my schedule around my appointments, so I get all my appointments lined up for the month or whatever, and then I kind of from there, because going past just my appointments at the Mayo Clinic, I'm still a veteran, so I have appointments at the VA clinic, and then sometimes, um, because it's just weird. But I also have a primary care physician, and through my TRICARE, and they're the ones that actually fund my Mayo Clinic appointments. So I have to go, and none of the agencies necessarily talk to each other. So I find myself constantly having to communicate my treatment and what the plan is. I'm usually the middle guy, and that's kind of inconvenient, but it's what I have to do to get the treatments that are necessary. So I just kind of go in again with that mindset that this is just, it's what I have to do. Um, but but it would be really great if the process was a little bit more streamlined. But that's pretty much what my whole week, month looks like, is that I go to my insurance companies, and I tell them, hey, this is what's going on, and make sure that authorizations are still in place. And I'm just constantly just reviewing and making sure I have coverage, and then going and making sure I have my appointments set up properly. And then after that, kind of developing schedules where I can do things that are important to me during this time, to keep myself engaged and not otherwise like help. But go ahead.
Are there any emerging therapies or clinical trials you are currently aware of? Uh,
To, to the best of my knowledge, every case is special in its own way, and it demands a specific regimen or a treatment plan. Um, I don't I don't believe that there's anything new on the horizon. Um, but I think as technology expands, medical research expands, I'm sure there's going to be something that's better on the way. But to my knowledge, I personally don't know of anything different. I think the other thing is that I know that we focus on discoteratosis congenita, but with the diagnosis of short telomere syndrome as well, that's something with your chromosomes and your DNA. So the fear with myself is that okay, we fixed the blood, but is there another organ that may be affected? And how do we address that properly? Or how do we treat the blood in a way that we're not going to affect other organs in a detrimental factor or fashion? And so it's very, very invasive and very kind of specific. The treatment is very specific to myself and my condition, but I really don't know if there's any other ways of going about this as far as keratosis congenita goes. Um,
Mhm. Um, who are let's see. So what advice would you give to others who have this who are new
so I
same
yes,
thing you
ma'am.
are?
I believe that the best advice that I can give is that don't sleep on your symptoms. Address them as they happen, um, or like in a relatively just don't let your symptoms kind of get to a point where they're unmanageable. Um, and like I said before, like it was very common in the military for people to just be like, you know what, like I really want to fly, so I'm just not. I'm gonna withhold information about how I'm feeling or anything like that, just so that they could continue their work. Um, but sometimes that leads to issues down the road and stuff, or things that could be addressed. Um, it's just that I ran off the premise of having a huge community and a very kind of I really invest a lot of my efforts and time into developing a community because um, I feel that when you go through these really hard things, um, you don't know how much those people really rally together and help you out. Because I mean, no one likes to hear that they're a burden, but a burden isn't necessarily a bad thing. A burden, by its definition, is just a load to be carried, and sometimes our loads are really too heavy for one person to experience or carry on their own, and it really takes a community of people to burden or unburden that one individual and help carry said load and get you through those really hard times. um, I think utilizing the resources available to you is really important. And with that comes a level of just going out there and asking if you have an issue, asking for help, and really pursuing the avenues that are available to you, and never settling. I think that's another big thing is just I could have very well just been like, oh, okay, it's just anemia, and then went on my way and didn't pursue any further testing or anything. I very well could have did that, but I probably wouldn't be here today because of just the progression, the natural progression of the disease. And so I feel like I feel like yeah, just community is very important. Utilizing the resources around you, and then and just educating yourself and the people around you. Those are probably some really important things to kind of carry and also maintain hope. I think it's very easy to kind of just quit or just say, you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore. But fighting every day, choosing life, it's very important, and it's not easy, but it's it's rewarding. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes a good thing can sometimes a bad thing can also be a good thing also, but, I know with my own condition, I wouldn't have been diagnosed had I not rubbed trisodium phosphate into my eyes. It's I have, a condition called homocystinuria, and it's a metabolic condition, um, but it there's a lot of things that that actually bad things can actually turn into good things.
and I really think it's a matter of perspective.
Mhm.
I think just of how I am and how I've just grown to be. I never really took this as like, why did this happen to me? I took it as an opportunity,
Yeah,
and past that, I felt that like how how blessed am I that like I'm able to experience this stuff, these really hard moments, in my life and get through them all, overcome them, um, and really just for myself, develop faith, develop mental health skills, develop physically, and just grow as an individual. Some people just don't get these opportunities, and I've been exposed to a lot, and it's really just given me an opportunity to grow. And I guess I'm just one of those people that needs the hard lessons to really to grow, I guess, as an individual. And I feel just very overall just blessed that I'm able to get past these things. And it could have been so easy to just quit and stuff, but I've fought every day, and it's not only myself, it's my family, my friends, it's everybody. We've all fought together, and just to be around such camaraderie during this hard time, it's
Mhm.
amazing. And it's also opened doors. Never, I think as a kid, I never would have thought that I would be flying in an AC-130 gunship. That's not the pathway that I was looking to pursue. Nor did I ever think that I would be almost like a career patient. Like, this is my appointments, my education, everything is around being sick. I don't think anyone really accounts that, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to be sick. And but it's opened so many doors. I mean, even with this experience with you and the opportunities that it's brought, um, now my passion, I call it service in a different way. I'm not able to serve the country in as a service member, but I can serve others through advocacy and sharing my story. And never did I think this was going to be my life plan or life path, but it is. And I'm happy, and I'm very happy. Um, and yeah.
Let's see. Looking back, is there anything that you wish you had done differently in terms of managing your health and seeking care earlier?
I believe overall, I don't think there was anything I could have did better per se. I think everything happened when it was necessary. It might have not been the time that I wanted to go through, like a transplant or anything like that. But looking back at it, it was probably my best time to actually do that. Where I think in talking to the doctors, there's kind of like a convergence of where are you like the most sick, but not too sick where you can't receive treatment, but also you're healthy enough that you can accept that treatment, and then hopefully it gives you your best shot at the best quality of life after treatment. And so I think everything aligned and everything happened when it needed to be. I believe by a design that things just happen when they do, and they happen for a reason. And I just trust that process.
Mhm.
And so I don't really feel like there's anything I could have did better. I really just don't feel like there was any necessary change to how things how they went down.
Any that you would like to share with others in the rare disease community?
I apologize, you cut out, but could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, what has been the biggest lesson or takeaway from your journey that you'd like to share with others?
Um, I think believing in yourself and maintaining a level of hope. Those have really been some crucial parts and big lessons that I've learned. Um, like continuing to fight, um, and um, and I think those are, yeah, I would say those are probably the biggest lessons. Is just to really trust the process, trust God, whatever it is to you. Just trust that you're going to make it through it, and you just got to keep uh, trusting the process, keep following the guidance of doctors or whatever you believe is going to give you your best shot at thriving, and then not giving up, maintaining that hope. I would say those are the lessons that are probably the biggest things that I'd like to share. Because I think overall, I don't feel like I'm special in any way other than I've just been exposed to a lot, and I think everyone has their own life journey and stuff. And but if you can believe in yourself, invest in yourself, and just maintain a level of hope that things are going to work out. Um, it's my hope that it does work out for everyone. Um, and so yeah.
You, as a two-time bone marrow recipient, what would you like to say to people considering becoming donors, and how has the gift changed your life?
Yes. So what I've learned is that it's not nearly as common to be a bone marrow or stem cell donor. A lot of people just don't go through the testing unless they're affected um, by kind of members of the family or friends that are going through or need treatment options. At least in the U.S., generally speaking, in Europe and other countries um, around the world, it's kind of a requirement to get registered on for to be a donor. But I think I would never say that people should be forced to do that. But I think opening yourself up to being a donor, because you never know who you might be able to help out, that would be a really big thing. I learned that like all of those other countries, it's as common as when you go to get your driver's license to register as a donor, and so a lot of donors come from overseas. But it's not like for myself, I didn't find it very common within the country until. Um, but I found myself asking friends like, "Hey, if you're open to it, would you do this?" And I had a lot of people do that, but it was only because somebody was like, "Hey, this is a thing. Maybe it'd be worthwhile." Um, and so I think I think that I think when it comes to the actual transplant and stuff, um, it's kind of hard to gauge because it's very specific to the regimen is very specific, but I didn't go in thinking that I was going to go through a second one, but I still showed up once they told me that there was going to be a second one in the purview, and that's transplants speak. But but yeah, I kind of just go along with it. Just be as present as you can be, because you never know what's going to happen. The body does some very crazy things when it's being manipulated in that fashion. So just kind of it's hard to kind of worry about, oh, is this transplant going to work? Oh, is this going to is if it fails, what happens next and stuff. But just kind of be as present as you can be. That's probably the most difficult thing, is just saying, okay, today I woke up, I got out of bed, I was able to walk, and that's really good for me right now, and finding your own pace. But
Mhm.
but it's difficult. I don't think there's any way to say, oh yeah, you're going to be fine or anything like that. There's trade offs. I think going in, I think the doctors even told me that, hey, with the transplant, there's going to be something that happens during this process. We don't know how severe it's going to be, but we're hoping that whatever you experience post transplant will be lesser than what you're experiencing now with your blood. And so, and that's kind of what's happened. I've experienced lung issues. Just there's a degradation to my pulmonary system. um, I have GVHD, which kind of affects my skin. So being out in the sun and things like that, is there's trade offs to everything. So I have to really weigh check my or weigh and balance everything, and kind of whether taking risk is worth it in a sense. And so um so just understand that it's a whole process, and you just have to just do your best. And even when your best doesn't feel like it's enough, just keep at it, and hopefully it'll work out. And that's what I kind of hold on to. There's been many setbacks, but I just keep telling myself it's going to be worth it. You just got to keep at it and don't give up.
Awareness for conditions like yours.
I would say that it's my hope that by sharing my story and experience, that I can draw more awareness. And so I've gone into a sense that I need to kind of just take advantage of the opportunities and the resources around me. Um, and and by sharing, I think the more we share, we talk, we create dialogues, the more that we just inherently create a wider network of awareness. And so I just got to keep doing that, and wherever it leads me, whoever I cross paths with, there's a lesson in there. There's an interaction. There's a purpose. There's a design to all those things, and I just got to kind of uh, just just accept what's coming my way. And I guess just for the sake of Discotertos congenita and stuff, just I feel like I kind of fall into a certain group that isn't always talked about, where you have your young and adolescents who are growing up with rare disease. You have the elderly who are experiencing rare disease later on in their life, and then you have the young adults and like myself, where I kind of fall into that adult, kind of not necessarily elderly kind of range. Um, and so just bringing light that this happens. I mean, I feel like I lived a full life in the military, just doing all those things, and then abruptly stopped. And now I'm a patient and an advocate now. And so learning to just adjust and really adapt to the environment that I'm in has been is kind of, I feel like exposing that and really just bringing light to these things happen. And how do we kind of navigate this stuff. I feel like a big focus of mine is probably with insurance companies and kind of pharmaceutical companies, just kind of explaining and telling these industries that, hey, look, like this is what's happening, these are the things I go through and stuff. And then also kind of at least with the rare disease legislative advocates and the RDLA, or Every Life Foundation, getting involved with their events and stuff, and kind of just bringing up these issues or whatever I encounter to my senators and representatives, to kind of just bring forth more awareness. So that's kind of the big thing, is to just bring awareness and share the story, share the experience, continuously develop the experience, and kind of um, adapt to the situation as it comes my way.
Hmm. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today, and for listening to Damien's inspiring story. Uh, as we come to a close, I want to remind everyone that you were someone, if you were someone struggling with thoughts of suicide, please reach out for help. You can call the Suicide Crisis Lifeline at 988, or you can text hello to 741 to connect with a trained counselor. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Rare Chef. I do lots of cooking videos. Been a while since I've done one. Where you can catch up on where you can catch the live video version of the podcast. Also, and subscribe to Rare Connection on your favorite podcasting platform. Stay updated for new episodes. Before you can also rareconnection.org and sign up for the email list and explore more about rare diseases and learn how you can get involved. For those listening to the audio version, you can text me directly on the through the link in the show notes. It will also be available on YouTube afterwards. And you can also, if you're on the YouTube version, the live version, or either one, you can also, if you're on one of the YouTube versions, you can go to, you can comment in the comments below the below where it is, and let's see. Thank you again for being part of Rare Connection community, and we will see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.